Calling all gamers, escapist users, fans of the big picture, game overthinker, movie Bob, various other LX, the Enthusiast Gaming Live Expo, from October 26th to October 28th at the Metro Toronto Convention Center in beautiful downtown Toronto. It's Canada's largest gaming expo, and I'll be there along with a ton of other cool guests and awesome stuff to see. But I want one of the awesome things I see to be you, so go to eglx.ca now to get your tickets. EGLX, the Enthusiast Gaming Live Expo, October 26th to 28th at the Metro Toronto Convention Center, Toronto, Canada. I'll be there, will you? So I guess I gotta do a thing about James Gunn writing and probably directing Suicide Squad 2, right? Since I've done 2 or 3 videos about what went down for him in Guardians 3 and that ongoing bullshit with Marvel and Disney basically giving into a totally fake fucking thing made up by internet Nazis that seems to have worked pretty much because Bob Iger was on vacation that week. Not that I don't want to, I do. What I mean is I've got to do one now instead of waiting for the other shoe to drop, i.e. finding out what's going to happen to Guardians and Gunn's script and who's actually going to direct that movie now, even if it happens. Basically, I wanted to wait until there was an actual statement from James Gunn or Disney on any of this, or at least for the mouse to finalize the new leadership position shuffle, i.e. who's going to be in charge of what once the merger with Fox goes through, which was expected to be announced last week, but then wasn't. See, I figured that'd be part of what was being waited on, i.e. the studio silence on what still was pretty much the biggest Disney Marvel media story outside of when does the Fox stuff get here, because the corporate restructuring is widely expected to be the scenario where we learn the fate of Alan Horn, the executive who made the call to fire James Gunn over the reported objections of Kevin Feige and others and is supposedly the main voice in the company keeping him from getting full-on rehired. Don't get excited though, despite having at one point been pegged as a likely soon retiree, Horn is actually expected throughout the industry to actually be promoted to head of divisions in the new Disney structure, essentially overseeing all the different semi-autonomous sub-brands, animation, Pixar, Lucasfilm, Marvel, whatever they decide to do with Fox Studios, Fox Searchlight, that sort of thing. Because while Marvel fans are pissed at him, rightly so I still think, fuck that guy, the fact is he's still generally seen as one of Disney's more valuable executives on the business side because he's made a lot of calls that made a lot of money. Chiefly, he's credited as the executive side architect of the live-action remake cycle that, again, whatever you think of those, I think some of them have been okay, most of them have been disposable, only a couple have been really bad, has basically become a billion-dollar brand of its own within the company. Although, then again, who knows, the 2 coming out this year, the Tim Burton Dumbo and the Guy Ritchie Aladdin, both look kinda terrible. Like, already. Also, the other big industry rumor cooking more broadly is that Disney's next big move immediately following the merger is a massive pivot to streaming initiative that'll see them put more focus than any other A-list studio on their new in-home streaming service as a primary release platform for new content, as opposed to theaters or their regular TV channels. And that's a high-risk but maybe high-reward gambit that pretty much only a studio that owns the people with disposable income but who still can't go out all the time because they've got kids market as completely as Disney does, and Horn is apparently the man with the plan to make that work, so he's probably not going anywhere, which might be why we're seeing possibly James Gunn definitively moving on to another studio or project now and likely not coming back for Guardians 3 as director, which of course would have had to have been in the works at least as an option for a while now. This isn't something that would have happened within a week, like, oh hey, we just had this crazy idea, what if James Gunn did Suicide Squad 2? Let's give him a call, see if he's available. No, this is something that's probably been back and forth for a while, we just haven't heard about it. But that's corporate stuff, we'll see what it ends up meaning or doesn't, who knows. How do I feel about Gunn doing Suicide Squad 2? If it goes through, I think it's a fucking great idea, and I'm happy as hell for him. I want to see good movies happen under whatever circumstances they happen, and I want to see good, talented people in the movie business continue to get jobs so they can do what they love and make a living on it. I don't give a shit on Marvel versus DC, studio versus studio, Disney versus Warner Brothers, corporations smashing their money together to see who's dick is. I don't give a shit. Alright, I don't care. You know, like the comic book store guy version of it, of, you know, which character would beat up which character, or whose books do you like better is one thing, that's fine, that's a hobby, weekend, chat over drinks thing, fine. You know, there's like an aesthetic discussion to be had, at least there was at one point, about, you know, the reigning Marvel aesthetic versus the Snyderverse aesthetic when that was the DC Universe thing, and approach versus approach. But those are like, you know, esoteric pie-in-the-sky things. I'm not invested in some kind of, like, movie dork Bloods and Crips bullshit over Marvel versus DC. I want to see good movies get made. You know, people have got this whole thing wrapped up in their identities where you're a Marvel fan, or you're a DC fan, and you're committed to this side, and you're gonna ride or die for it, and it's such fucking bullshit. Are you seeing any of the money from this? Like, is this enriching your lives in any way? I mean, if you like the movies and you enjoy them, then yes, they are. But like, is there financial success? You know, is Alan Horn getting to add another wing to his fucking house benefiting you? Really? Like, I care about what happens to James Gunn because I like him as a filmmaker. I respect his biography as, you know, where he's come from, where he's going. You know, he's been a filmmaker that I liked before he was involved with Marvel. I plan to like him after he's involved with Marvel. You know, I have followed his career for a long time. I really liked the Guardians movies. They really speak to me. They meant a lot to me. I liked a lot of his other movies. I want to see him succeed because he's a great filmmaker. He seems to be a really terrific guy, and he got fucking screwed here over some bullshit. Like, that's why I want to see him do good under any circumstances. But, like, Suicide Squad 2, yeah, I want it to be good because I want movies to be good. I'm not invested in, oh, yeah, the power is shifting to DC versus Marvel. Maybe, you know, look, it's good for my business, you know, because there's lots of articles to write about that and videos to make about, you know, Hollywood power structures moving around, and is this the sea change? Is this the point where we've had a decade where Marvel has been, like, the top dog, and it may or may not be capped off this coming year if Black Panther does become the first superhero movie to be nominated for Best Picture. You know, that could be a thing that happens, but then are we going to slide into a decade of, okay, Marvel had its thing, and they made a couple of bad moves with James Gunn coming here, and eventually one of these movies has to not work. You know, the original Avengers are retiring, so maybe the new crop isn't going to be as exciting for people, and it's going to shift over, and now we're going to be in the period where DC is on top for a while. Like, that's sort of interesting, you know, like an article writing, video making perspective, but I'm not invested. Like, it's not gonna power me up in the morning to wake up and find out that, like, DC's stock has risen a little bit or something. Fuck that shit. You know, don't go out into the world wearing, like, your fandom like it's your goddamn gang colors or something. I mean, don't wear gang colors in general anyway, but, like, if you're gonna do it over, like, some real shit, not over which movie studio you think makes the best fucking superhero movies. Jesus Christ. So to the degree that I find the spectacle of it amusing, sure, you know, there's this super angry contingent of DC fandom that's bought really hard into the idea of that philosophical artistic difference between the two comic book movie universes, and, you know, it's odd that got stirred in with the political thing, where the DCEU hardcore fandom was an alt-right thing because Marvel was SJW, which is weird because I'm not sure when exactly that whole thing happened, but it absolutely did on, like, the social media side. I'm not saying if you like the DC movies, you're a Republican or something, but, like, there's an edge to that where, like, if the same people who, like, jump on your ass about, like, the Snyder Cut on social media, if you scroll the timeline long enough, you're gonna find shit about, like, you're gonna find, like, the NPC shit, or the MAGA shit, or the Trump shit, or what. You're just gonna get it in there. You know, Ayn Rand shit, 4chan stuff. That seems to be the angle, and I'm not sure. You know, it's very likely probably a lot like the Gamergate, Comicsgate stuff, where you had, like, you know, organized alt-right guys looking at you know, angry nerd situations and saying, hey, here's a place where we can jump in and act like we're on the side of something, and then see if anyone wants to come along and get red-pilled, or whatever the bullshit terminology is this month. But yeah, you know, in case you didn't hear, Marvel is SJW because people talked about racism in a movie called Black Panther, and Brie Larson said a thing, and probably some shit about Disneyland having a Pride Day or something, so they hate everything about the so-called Marvel aesthetic, and now the main architect of a bunch of the stuff they've been pretending to shit on for years about jokes and pop songs and dance-offs and comedy is getting brought in to fix one of their franchises because the first one made money, but it was terrible. Like, watching people who do give a shit about stupid fanboy tribalism have to parse that is funny as hell. Oh man, I fucking hate the Marvel movies, I hate the Guardians movies with their dance-offs and turd jokes, and fuck James Gunn, I'm glad they got that guy out of there. I'm gonna pretend to believe all that stupid pedophile stuff because some, you know, has-been comic book artist with a YouTube channel said I should pretend to believe that, yeah, and then James Gunn's gonna do Suicide Squad 2. Oh shit, I guess I like him now. Or I hate Suicide Squad 2. Or I don't know. Tell me what to think, internet. Tell me what to think. Like, watching morons do that is funny to me, but that's the extent of which I care. Otherwise, fuck it. I hope James Gunn gets paid, and I hope Suicide Squad 2 is good. Otherwise, the important thing is that even though Disney is apparently going to stand by their ignorant, short-sighted decision to fire him in the first place, at least one studio, and plenty of others probably, aren't going to make this incredibly talented and bankable filmmaker a pariah over dumb bullshit that doesn't matter, and only stupid people and cynical Nazi bastards pretending to care about it actually care about. Now, do I wish it had worked out another way, and that he was going to do Guardians 3 instead? Yes, yeah, I like those movies. I'd like another one. I'm nominally invested in those characters and that story, even though, no, I don't don't know this particular filmmaker personally, at the point where you care more about the well-being of fictional people than the real ones is the point where your priorities are out of step, period. So this isn't, at this point, a win for me or what I wanted, but it's a win for the person who was wronged, and that's what matters as far as I'm concerned. Now, will he make a good movie out of it? I mean, probably. He's a good writer and director, assuming he also directs it. It feels like he probably will. If they let him do what he wants and recognize that they probably just need to ignore as much of the last one as possible and trust a good filmmaker to make a good film, we'll get a good film. I feel like speculating on what the James Gunn version of Suicide Squad would be at this point is otherwise kind of pointless, because the only point of reference anyone would have is Guardians of the Galaxy, and his version of that was a radical departure from the script he started from and any prior iteration of the property. So who can say here? Script he started from, because he did not write the original script that Marvel bought to start the Guardians of the Galaxy, the first movie. He rewrote entirely a draft that had originally been written by Nicole Perlman, and then he wrote Guardians 2 originally on his own. I assume you can bet Margot Robbie will come back as Harley Quinn if she wants to, because she's the only thing that people seem to be way into from the first one, and Warner Brothers is putting her in pretty much whatever the hell she wants, because her Harley Quinn is pretty much the only thing outside Wonder Woman that everyone seemed to agree was good in the now basically aborted and scrapped version 1 incarnation of the DC Extended Universe franchise. I mean, I think people really need to do cue in on this with all of these announcements, is that we don't know what the DC Extended Universe looks like pretty much after Aquaman. And even then, we don't know fully what Aquaman is until it comes out. That longer trailer that they've released, that 5-minute long big preview clip of Aquaman, that basically looks like a second longer trailer that has 2 big action scenes kind of cut into it, that I thought just looked the fucking balls. That's what they showed us at San Diego Comic-Con this past year, over the summer. And that was part of, I think that was the first thing that they showed. And that was part of what made that, plus the footage from Wonder Woman 1984, plus Shazam, and the general attitude of what was on stage, and also not talking about Batman or Superman at all, not talking about the other movies, not talking up connections and whatnot, no mention of Snyder Cuts, Justice League, anything like that, no talk about the Flash and the Cyborg movie, which some people seem to think is still happening. I mean, come on. It really did feel like they could not have made it more clear in the room at that point that the prior version of the DCEU, everything up to Justice League other than Wonder Woman, was gone, over, dead. We're starting over. We're just rebuilding, whole thing getting rebuilt. And this was before we knew that Henry Cavill not coming back as Superman and Ben Affleck probably not coming back as Batman. Like, they could not have been more clear that the Mark I DCU was over if they had put a film can marked the Snyder Cut up on stage and then ritually burned it in front of the audience. Like, the only way they could have made it more clear, given how much comedy and sort of brighter, more jovial atmosphere was in the Wonder Woman preview. Shazam looking exactly like a big-budget version of a New Line superhero movie from, like, 1996. Like, the best thing in that trailer is that they kept the New Line logo on it, because it is being done through New Line. But that really does look like, other than the good special effects, it looks like a movie that they would have made, the version of that movie they would have made back when, like, when New Line was doing The Mask and such. You know, that kind of fun, sort of semi-grounded, we're doing this, but it's a comedy, and we're leaning into the high concept of its superhero movie, and which I think is the right idea. In any case, wandered a bit off track there. Also, Warner Brothers is just putting Margot Robbie in as many movies as she will do for them, because, I mean, have you seen her? I think, yeah, she's going to do the Barbie movie as well, because someone, again, took a look at her and took a look at the property and said, well, duh, and Mattel got the right spec to put that together. So as far as I remember, the news report was that her Barbie movie with Mattel is set up through Warner Brothers. They were going to do that as a comedy with Amy Schumer for a while. That fell through. Mattel's been trying to make that movie for, like, 50 years, and now that they've got her on it, it probably gets made. But either way, even if she doesn't do Suicide Squad 2, by that same token, she's already doing, like, 2 other movies as Harley Quinn. She's going to do Birds of Prey, and she's going to be in a Harley and Joker movie, which may or may not involve the Jared Leto version of the Joker, who may or may not be back for Suicide Squad 2. No one seems to know if Jared Leto is still employed as the Joker at Warner Brothers, because they cut him out of a bunch of Suicide Squad. There was all that business about how no one on the movie liked working with him, and Sony has him tapped for the Mobius the Living Vampire movie to be part of the Spider-Man spin-off movies, which looks like they're probably going to try and do now, because a whole bunch of you went out and actually saw Venom, and that's making money, so Sony is going to feel emboldened, and they're probably going to, shit out that Craven movie and the Mobius movie and, make a whole bunch of these. We're going to get several more bad movies about Spider-Man villains. I get this is the world now. This is the world. So they're probably going to make that Mobius movie because, hey, Venom made money and this one has a vampire in it. And Jared Leto's got photos of somebody because that dude still keeps getting employed despite being, Jared Leto. So in any case, it's possible that Harley Quinn doesn't come back for Suicide Squad 2, that they take this in a literal whole other direction, and maybe it's more like the Suicide Squad of the comics, where they're not necessarily A-list bad guys. Maybe they get other villains, maybe this turns into another thing. I would still expect that they would find a way for Harley Quinn at least to be in there. I imagine Will Smith will be back if Margot Robbie wants Will Smith to be back. People don't seem to remember this from the previous movie, is that Will Smith was pretty much in that movie because sometimes when you hire Margot Robbie, you get Will Smith. He just kind of comes with that package now. His business is interesting. So yeah, who knows? James Gunn's Suicide Squad could be a completely new team, completely new concept. They said it's going to be a completely new concept. I want to see what it is. People will probably imagine that it'll be just like Guardians. People will try to figure out, oh, this character is the Drax, this character is the Star-Lord. I'm pretty sure he can do more than one kind of movie. Ironically, in many ways, Suicide Squad, the first one, is closer to the sort of movie he was doing and that he was known for before making Guardians, this kind of, like edgy, explicit trauma sort of thing. So maybe we get some of that energy. Maybe he kind of goes back to that well. Even if he'd never made Guardians of the Galaxy, the prospect of a Suicide Squad movie, written and directed, possibly directed by the guy who wrote, like, Tromeo and, who, helped to write Tromeo and Juliet, and, Slither, and, wrote and directed Super. That's pretty great. So, I'm looking forward to it, yeah. That, of course, leaves open the question of what will or should happen to Guardians of the Galaxy 3, which, believe it or not, is a more complicated issue now that he's probably not going to come back and direct it than if he did, because even if he stays fired, because of how his deal was arranged, Disney still has to pay James Gunn, and the negotiations they've been going through, hence the total silence from the primary parties involved, one would imagine, have mostly been about how much they've got to pay him. See, they rather pointedly did not fire him for having breached his contract, because he didn't breach his contract, because telling bad jokes on Twitter years ago and having people pretend to be upset about them later because you said mean things about their friend Donald Trump is not something that would have been included in a contract, because that's stupid. So they've got to pay him for at least some of the work he already did on the project. Specifically, how much do they owe him if they keep that script? Since even if there were rewrites, as is the case with most screenplays, he wasn't an active part of shooting or edited the film, it effectively means from a certain perspective that he was fired as director, but remained employed as the writer, which is kind of weird, right? But that's the business. Now, they're either going to use that script, give him the screen credit, or they're not. Now, if it's not, and they don't, fuck it, all bets are off. Anything could happen. Who knows who from the cast stays on? Who knows if they even make the movie at that point? That becomes a mess. If they are going to keep the script, which feels like the more likely scenario, honestly, then the radio silence starts to make more sense. So you have to remember, the firing was real, and the sticking with it is real, because Hollywood executive ego inertia is real, but the controversy was always fake. There never was any actual Me Too or Time's Up blowback on James Gunn or the Guardians movies or those fucking tweets in any meaningful capacity. It was a gang of right-wing trolls pretending to be offended and faking blow up because they didn't like his politics. This wasn't something anyone who, matters ever gave a shit about in the real world. So while rehiring him was apparently a non-starter on the corporate side because seemingly either one or more executives didn't want him around to start with or didn't want to be seen as admitting a mistake, there would have been no big stir about it. Like, normal people never cared one way or another, and even the pack of jackals who started this business have mostly moved on to bullying other people. Yeah, I mean, these are guys who moved on from James Gunn a while ago. They just spent the last couple weeks getting that gropey drunk bastard onto the Supreme Court, and now I imagine they're going to refocus efforts onto shitting all over Elizabeth Warren, I think. The people who are still dedicated to being upset about this are overwhelmingly on the pro-rehire James Gunn side, and whatever version of someone else is going to direct Guardians 3 or Guardians 3 just isn't happening is eventually a reality. They're the ones who are going to raise hell and be a certain amount of bad PR about it. If you're Disney, that's what you're looking to avoid, and that's why any version of a deal to keep James Gunn's script would include him not talking down the eventual production or giving it some kind of blessing in the press to the fans, whatever. That's how I would imagine it happens. Which is a shitty thing to ask, but probably something that does happen because it's the business. More importantly, if and when they do get a, hey, these things happen, it's okay, don't take it out on the movie, I'm good with the people who were going to finish it from James Gunn, then it becomes no longer a third rail for good directors to openly look at taking the project on, and they can find a good person to hopefully hopefully pull off a good enough third installment. And yeah, that's what I've got to say and speculate and think about all of that. If some of you clicked hoping for a speculation about this is what I think James Gunn's Suicide Squad 2 could be like, this is what I think will happen with Guardians 3, that's not what I'm doing here. No one really, because we don't have any statement, we don't know anything about cast or whatnot, it's genuinely pointless. Like, I could pull a list of DC villains out of my ass and say, hey, here's some people who could be in Suicide Squad 2. But, and if I was getting, like, paid to by a website, like, yeah, I will fart that listicle out like nobody's business. Money's money. But, that's not, like, a relevant thing right now. When we start seeing, like, casting, when we hear, yes, we are definitely having him direct this movie, this is going to go through, then we can talk about that. When we know who is, if anyone is going to direct Guardians 3, then you can look at that and say, okay, this is how this might be different. But right now, it's just pure, raw, pie in the sky, throw a dart at the wall, pull it out of your ass, speculation, and who's got time for that? I have no idea how long this is going to cut together, but this is probably already too long. In any case, that's the update on that. Thank you for listening to In Bob We Trust. Once again, for those of you who are, still curious as to, hey, In Bob We Trust is a little different now, a little more free-form, a little more tangential, got kind of a ramble going on, feels more like a one-man podcast. What happened to the slideshow kind of format thing? I'm still doing that. It's called The Big Picture, and it airs weekly on The Escapist, so go to escapistmagazine.com, check it out. We've had many new episodes. There's about close to, a little over 10 episodes now up on the website. We're 3 episodes into Schlocktober. The Schlocktober movies for this month so far were Troll, Parents, and Of Unknown Origin, not necessarily in that order. Check those out. By the way, fans from the Canada area, I'm going to put the promo up the front of this, but just in case you skipped over that thinking it was someone else's ad, I'm going to be at EGLX, the Enthusiast Gaming Live Expo in Toronto, downtown Toronto Convention Center, from the 26th to the 28th, so come check me out there. And I'll be back next time with more stuff. Hopefully good news, because I like good news. Bad news is bad. World's mostly bad news right now. Thank you very much. Calling all gamers, escapist users, fans of The Big Picture, Game Overthinker, Movie Bob, various other things I've done, really anyone who's got time that weekend. This is me, Bob, inviting you to come hang out with me at EGLX, the Enthusiast Gaming Live Expo, from October 26th to October 28th at the Metro Toronto Convention Center in beautiful downtown Toronto. It's Canada's largest gaming expo, and I'll be there along with a ton of other cool guests and awesome stuff to see. But I want one of the awesome things I see to be you, so go to eglx.ca now to get your tickets. EGLX, the Enthusiast Gaming Live Expo, October 26th to 28th at the Metro Toronto Convention Center, Toronto, Canada. I'll be there, will you?